Well, hello and welcome to our Zoom education session today on safety in the home. My name is Sarah Cook and I'm the Public Education Coordinator at the Alzheimer's Society of Peterborough, Kawartha Lakes, Northumberland, and Haliburton. And along with my colleague and fellow education coordinator, Shelby Berry, in today's session, we're going to be talking about some tips and strategies for staying safe in the home. And we often look to the recommendations and the requests of our clients when identifying the type of education that is most relevant and helpful for your learning. And so this is a topic that seems to be of interest to many. So we're really pleased to be able to offer it to you today. We know that it is not only possible, but in fact, it's very important for people living with dementia and their families to live both well and safely in their communities. Staying safe at home and in the community is of the utmost importance to all of us as we continue to age. For the person with dementia or memory loss, a familiar environment can really help that person to connect to the past and really maintain that sense of who they are and that personhood that we talk about so often. However, some practical changes may need to be made in order to keep that home safe and supportive. There are some important factors to consider when thinking about how to increase the safety in our homes. And one of the biggest considerations is that when we're modifying the home environment, we need to keep it familiar. We need to really strike a balance between creating a safe environment, but also creating and fostering that independence in the person. So, we want to keep the person as safe as possible, but we also want to continue to allow that person to remain as independent and confident in their abilities as possible. So it's really about striking that balance. We also need to be aware that creating too many restrictions can make it difficult for the person to take part in daily activities, and it can really affect their self-esteem. So we want to make sure that we're not placing so many restrictions in place for that individual. It's also important to keep in mind that some of the changes that occur are a result of having dementia and brain changes. So it's part and parcel of having cognitive changes that happen in the brain, and they can be numerous. So we can look at things like decreased balance over time, decreases in their reaction time, in visual and perceptual processing and perspectives, physical limitations that can make it more difficult to walk around and navigate that environment, and of course also changes in memory, in judgment, and in insight, which can affect the overall health and safety of the person. Another key consideration is that we need to look at adapting household tasks and activities to the person's current abilities. And if you look at an example, a person who really enjoyed woodworking, perhaps, due to safety concerns, the person may no longer be able to use the power tools, but maybe they're still able to work away in their workshop or their workroom and nail or sand or paint their creations. So that might be considered safer than using those power tools. So we need to be aware of changes as they happen and reevaluate the need to make further changes as those abilities continue to change with the progression of dementia. So consider that. And just overall, the considerations, the tips and strategies that we're going to offer today will really vary according to the person with dementias, their needs, the ongoing changes that they're experiencing and their abilities. So needs, abilities, and what works best for the person are likely to change over time. And so being flexible and adaptable it's really key to the situation. So during our discussion today, we're going to explore three main areas to address when considering how to stay safe at home and also in the community. The first is that we need to consider living arrangements. Second, we need to consider the physical space, the overall environment. And finally, the third, we need to consider the person's physical health and well-being. And while all of these are important aspects of safety in the home, we're going to spend most of our discussion today exploring the tips and strategies around making the physical space safe and supportive to the person that's living with dementia. We could not begin our discussion on how to stay safe at home without considering the living arrangements of the person. And so this is really key because it can certainly vary from person to person and situation to situation. So we need to consider the current living arrangements for the person living with dementia so that we can identify the potential supports or changes that need to be made to keep the person safe and supported. Each person's situation may be a little bit different and may also change as the needs of the person with dementia change, or it could be if the current life situations change for the person or their partner, their spouse, their family member, and so on. So in considering the most current living arrangement, is the person living on their own? Are they living with family members or with a spouse or a partner? Different recommendations and strategies may apply depending on the person's living arrangements. And we're going to talk about that in the next little bit. Living alone can be difficult for people that are living with dementia, but it can also provide a sense of independence for that individual as well as confidence. So for people that are living with dementia that wish to live alone, it is important to remain safe while doing so. And so we have some tips for how to remain safe while living alone. So first of all, it may be helpful to arrange for outside support or outside help with things like housekeeping, with meal preparation, if that poses some risk, and also with transportation. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the transportation later in our presentation. It may be helpful also to have an occupational therapist visit the home and assess, the living space to suggest which ways or which areas or tasks could be made safer for everybody involved. So it's really helpful to have that occupational therapist in to do the assessment within the home environment. We could also have a family or friend, a family member visit or call once a day to just check in with the person and make sure that all is okay. It's good to have those telephone reassurance check-ins. It's also very helpful to leave a set of keys with a trusted neighbor or friend in case you happen to get locked out. It's not unusual. That can happen from time to time. And another key safety consideration is to think about appointing someone to assist with making important decisions. And we have talked about this in the various education sessions that we have provided, but it can be helpful to ensure that the details are documented on how financial, legal, care wishes, all of those important future planning considerations, how they are to be handled. And then I really think that using different strategies to help remind us of the safety in the home can be very helpful. So using labels or notes or even alarms as ongoing reminders of those routine safety tasks. So I like to think of the example of putting a little sticky note near the off button on the stove, of course not near the open flame or near the heat source. But if you place a little reminder near the off button, then that will serve as a reminder for you to shut it off after it's being used. So those are the kinds of things that we may be able to put in place to make that home environment safer. common concern or question that people share with us is, they'll say things like, well, the person with dementia is currently living with me, or they're currently living with another family member, but is it okay to leave them alone from time to time? And that can be a difficult, situation or question to consider. But we often advise that even if the person with dementia is living with a spouse or partner or another family member, it may be very helpful to assess if they can be safely left alone. And the issue needs careful evaluation because it could become a potential safety concern for both the person living with dementia or memory loss, but also any others within the home. So these are some questions and considerations that may help you to decide. So, it's really important that you reflect on these honestly, and this may help to kind of guide your thinking. So, does the person with dementia experience any confusion, or are they unpredictable in stressful situations? Do they recognize a dangerous situation? So something like a fire, if a fire were to break out, or smoke within the kitchen environment, for example. Do they know how to use the telephone in an emergency? Or do they know how to get help in an emergency situation? Do they tend to stay content within the home environment, or are they repeatedly trying to leave the home or the physical space? Do they wander at times or become disoriented? And consider that this most times we think about wandering outside of the home, but it could also be wandering and becoming disoriented inside the home, perhaps trying to find their way to the washroom or to their bedroom. So watch for that. Do they show any signs of agitation, depression, or withdrawal when left alone for any period of time? And finally, do they attempt to pursue former interests or hobbies that may now involve, some supervision? So things like cooking or appliance repair or work or woodworking. Are they trying to engage in those kinds of activities, but knowing that supervision is required? A bit of a startling statistic is that 60% of people that are living with dementia will go missing at some point, often without any warning at all. It's really important to have a safety plan in the event that somebody does go missing. And it's important to have that safety plan regardless of whether the person is living alone or whether they are living with a partner, a spouse, or a family member. The Alzheimer's Society of Ontario has created some incredibly helpful documents to assist with developing a safety plan. And they've done this through the Finding Your Way program. So there is a Finding Your Way website that's listed at the bottom of your screen. It's findingyourwayontario.ca. And you can find all of these different components of the safety plan there. It's helpful to complete the Finding Your Way identification kit and to keep it somewhere safe. Uh, it may be helpful to think about leaving a copy with a trusted friend or a trusted neighbor. And if you have a second home, a cottage or a trailer, for example, it may be helpful to also leave a copy there as well. Consider a tracking device to help monitor the person's whereabouts if they're out walking. And again, you can find a wonderful list on the Finding Your Way website of the various tracking devices that are available now. And what I really like is that you can do a cost and feature comparison. It has that option within the site to be able to look at what the tracking devices offer and to do a bit of a cost comparison to help you make the right decision of what's right for the person. We also recommend registering for a Medical Alert Safely Home bracelet, and I've included the website there on your screen as well. So it's an identification bracelet that the person wears, much like a Medical Alert bracelet. And of course, it contains an identification number that can help first responders, anybody that comes across the person that may be out walking or wandering. They can notify the local police, and then they can help with the safe return home of that person. Currently, it's about $50 a year. So you get the bracelet, the identification bracelet, the monitoring fee for a year for $50. So it's really a great kind of peace of mind to have in place to help support that person. It may be also helpful to become familiar with the incident response checklist that lists the steps to take if a person living with dementia goes missing, and also the post-incident checklist, and that lists the steps to follow when you reunite a person that's living with dementia after they go missing. And again, all of these identification kits and checklists can be found on the Finding Your Way website. And it's important that you visit that and really get that safety plan in place. Regardless of whether the person is living alone or with others, there may come a time when it is no longer safe for the person living with dementia to live at home. And deciding when to change the living environment, such as transitioning into a long-term care home, for example, that can be a very difficult decision. However, it's important to ensure that this decision is made with the advice of others that may be able to provide that expertise. So a group that consists of the care partners, a family doctor, the person living with dementia, of course. And it is really key when we're keeping the safety of the person living with dementia at the top of our minds in making those plans for their safety. And it can be helpful to consider these tips to assist us with making that decision. So we often encourage people to talk about it early on and decide and agree together at what point it will no longer be safe to live at home. So having that discussion early, talking about kind of your ideas around that. Keeping an eye out for any changes in environment or the person's ability that may create a safety concern. And also knowing that if adequate care can no longer be provided or received, or if there is a safety risk involved, that it may be time to consider other housing options. So those are key to just keep in mind when living at home. It may no longer be an option. So I'm now going to turn it over to Shelby, who is going to discuss creating safety within the physical home environment.
Thank you, Sarah. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me, Sarah?
Yeah, I can totally hear you.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, so as Sarah mentioned, now we're going to dive into considering the physical space and environment that the person with dementia is living in. So we're actually going to break it down as best we can room by room and talk about some of the considerations that should be made with each room. So as dementia progresses, there may be changes in balance, visual perceptions, memory, and judgment. A person living with dementia may feel more tired or stressed, which may make it more difficult for them to assess safety risks and kind of look out for some of those safety things around the home. So making simple changes in the home can ensure that the person with dementia is living safely with increased comfort. And this can, of course, bring a greater peace of mind for family members as well. So assessing the physical space for safety begins with checking each room of the home for potential hazards and making note of changes that you would like to make based on where the person with dementia is at right now. So changes in the brain as dementia progresses can cause behavior changes to happen, but it's important to keep in mind that sometimes changing the environment will likely be more effective than trying to change the person's behavior. So keep that in mind as we go from room to room.
Sorry, Shelby.
It's okay. Perfect. So first we're going to talk about some of the bathroom safety tips to consider. So consider installing a shower chair or grab bars. So grab bars could be placed beside the toilet or near the bathtub. And a shower chair can be a good option if the person living with dementia has difficulty standing or would just feel safer seated while having a shower. A handheld shower head could also be useful to use while using the shower chair. Addressing any slippery surfaces can also be helpful. So using non-skid strips or a mat in the bathroom or shower can be helpful. Also considering the flooring of the bathroom, and if it's not carpeted, then non-skid strips could also be used around the bathtub, the shower, the sink, or the toilet areas, anywhere that might get slippery. Using a faucet cover on the bathtub can help avoid injury if there's a risk of falling. So a foam rubber faucet cover can be used for that. Also locking up or removing potentially hazardous products. So this is a recommendation you're going to see on most of the slides as we go room for room. And the reason for that is there's a common symptom of dementia called agnosia. And agnosia is the loss of ability to recognize sensory information. So the person living with dementia may have a difficult time interpreting the information that's coming in related to their senses. So due to the brain changes, a person with dementia may inadvertently think the hazardous product is something that they could use for a different purpose. So for example, they might try to consume a hazardous product when that's not its purpose. So an example of this could be a person living with dementia may see a lemon scented cleaner in the bathroom and see the lemon and everything on the label and that it's a liquid, and they may mistaken that for a lemon beverage and try to consume it if they're thirsty. Another consideration with agnosia is that the person living with dementia may lose the ability to recognize the function of an item. So for example, if a razor and a toothbrush are sitting side by side in the cabinet, the person may have a difficult time determining which one is for which function. So that presents a risk in the event that they accidentally pick up the razor but are thinking about the function of a toothbrush. So we want to make sure that we use things like safety latches to lock up any items that could be potentially dangerous, and especially the bathroom where there can be a lot of medications, making sure that those medications have things like the child-proof lids on them. We also want to reduce water temperatures. So setting the thermostat on your hot water heater to below 120 degrees Fahrenheit or 48.9 degrees Celsius can be helpful. Removing or repositioning door locks. So this can help in the event that the person living with dementia may lock themselves in the bathroom accidentally, considering moving the door lock like higher on the door so it's out of their vision but can still be used if needed. And also consider labeling hot and cold water faucets. So this can be done by labeling them with the colors blue or red, if the person with dementia would recognize that, or using the words hot and cold are another option that you could consider. So moving on to the kitchen. So preventing access to potentially dangerous appliances or using appliances with automatic shut-off functions can be helpful. So if the person living with dementia should no longer be using the stove, for example, You could consider installing safety knobs on the stove to prevent the person from turning the stove on or off. Other considerations might be disconnecting the garbage disposal or using tea kettles, or again, a stove that has automatic shut-off functions can be helpful. Again, considering any potentially dangerous supplies that are in the kitchen and locking them up using safety latches. So some examples of things that you might kind of survey for in the kitchen would be items like cleaning products, alcohol, matches, knives, scissors, or even plastic bags. And again, the concern here would be related to the person not having the recognition of the hazard that product might be. And an example of this related to the kitchen that Sarah and I were talking about yesterday. She was sharing the example of a wife and her husband. Her husband has dementia and they often bake together on a regular basis. So she wasn't really concerned when she left to go to the washroom and he continued to bake. And she had asked him to go downstairs with a measuring cup into the pantry and get a cup of sugar for the cake. And when she returned from the washroom, he was mixing the cake batter and everything seemed to be just fine. And it wasn't until later when they actually tried the cake that they realized that he must have mixed up the sugar with laundry detergent. So gone into the wrong pantry, the wrong area of the house when given that instruction. So it's just an example to show how easily that mistake can be made in terms of misinterpreting a hazardous product. Also checking foods in the refrigerator often and throwing out ones that have gone bad. So again, changes related to dementia can make it difficult for the person with dementia to know how long food is in the refrigerator and also to know that food can expire and that they should check to see how if something's gone bad in the refrigerator. So if a person with dementia is living alone, checking the refrigerator can be a good way to see how they are managing, to see if food has spoiled and gone past its expiry date, and then considering if maybe some additional help is needed there. Using dishes and placemats in contrasting colors. So contrasting colors can help a person with dementia better identify between different objects. So for example, if a tablecloth, a plate, and a cup are all white, the person with dementia may have a hard time recognizing that those different items are on the table and may inadvertently knock something off the table. So if the placemat was a different color, for example, that would provide that contrast for them to be able to see everything that's on the table. So moving on to the bedroom. So consider installing a monitoring device. So a monitoring device or a bed monitor will help you hear if the person living with dementia needs help. This might be particularly helpful if the person has advancing dementia. So if they maybe aren't sleeping as well as they used to or up more in the night, having this monitoring device can be helpful for seeing if they need some assistance. Be cautious if heating devices are being used. So don't use portable space heaters in the person's bedroom. And if they do have an electric blanket or heating pad, keep the controls either out of the reach or consider using an automatic shut-off timer. Also consider the safety of bedroom furniture. So pad any sharp corners on the furniture or replace or remove furniture that has sharp corners. So again, if there's a high risk of falls, the sharp corners could be a danger there. Considering the use of night lights where needed. So if the person tends to get up in the night either to drink or have something to eat or to go to the bathroom, Try meeting these needs before bedtime to see if it makes a difference. And if not, automatic night lights can be helpful to ensure that they still have some visibility if they're getting up in the night. And any form of clutter can certainly be a tripping hazard. So we want to remove any clutter that could increase the risk of falling. So changes with peripheral vision, so our ability to kind of see the things on either side of our line of vision, can make it difficult for the person with dementia to move around a cluttered space. So they may be able to see what's in front of them, but not what's side to side. So consider how the space could be simplified if possible to help them move around better. And again, with the living room, we want to avoid clutter and tripping hazards. So things to consider in the living room space might be recycling newspapers and magazines, keeping areas where the person walks free of any furniture or cords that might be on the floor, keeping plastic bags out of reach, and limiting decorative items. We also want to consider trimming large plants or removing plants that might be toxic if they were consumed. Also consider marking glass doors or windows or furniture. So placing a decal on like a sliding glass door, for example, can help identify that there is a door there for the person with dementia. Take caution when using fireplaces or wood stoves. So don't leave the person alone with an open fire or the wood stove. Also removing any excess furniture. So just kind of see how the person is moving through the space. And if there needs to be more space for them to move around, just consider what maybe furniture is there that's not used and could be moved or rearranged. And also consider removing rugs or curtains with busy patterns that may be confusing or disorienting to the person with dementia. So avoid patterned carpets, especially striped or checkered ones, which could be perceived as holes in the ground. Rugs may also be tripping hazards. So if they aren't secured to the floor, it might be better to remove some rugs. So for the laundry room, again, there can be a lot of potential hazards in the laundry room. So we can consider using safety latches on cabinets to lock up things like detergent pods, fabric softeners, or any other hazardous product that could be in the laundry room. If the person with dementia should not be using the washer and dryer anymore, consider closing and latching the doors and lids to the washer and dryer, or consider removing large knobs so that the person with dementia can no longer tamper with the machinery. Or another option may be just closing the laundry room door, and if there is an option to lock it, then locking that door might be helpful as well. The garage, shed, and basement safety tips to consider. So again, consider the dangerous items that might need to be locked up in this area, and use safety latches or locks to do this. So some things to consider locking up might be tools, tackle, machines, sporting equipment, paint, fertilizer, gas, cleaning supplies, or other toxic materials, and remove all guns or weapons from your home. So the whole kind of motto of out of sight, out of mind is what we're thinking of when we are locking things up. So Sarah used the example earlier of due to the changing abilities of the person living with dementia, they can no longer use maybe the power saws that they usually used as part of their woodworking. So if this equipment was still out in the garage, the person might see it and be tempted to go tinker around with it, because due to the dementia, they may not have the knowledge of the change in their abilities when using that piece of equipment. So in these cases, it can often be better to remove that piece of equipment so they aren't cued to kind of try it out and tinker around and increase that safety risk there. Locking all vehicles, so consider covering or removing vehicles and bikes that aren't frequently used if the person has advancing dementia. So Sarah's going to talk a little bit about driving when we wrap up this section, because driving and safety often go hand in hand. So we'll touch a bit on that too. And again, consider locking the doors to these areas as well. So sometimes just preventing the access to the area can be one of the best safety features you can put in place. So safety tips to consider outside your home, in your yard and things like that. Check the exits. So if the person with dementia uses a walker or wheelchair, make sure that they will be able to get in and out of your home when necessary. So consider widening doorways or adding ramps. Keep steps safe. So mark the edges of steps with bright tape. So again, that color contrast can help the person with dementia better identify the space between things in this case, because dementia can change their depth perception. So that colored tape can help them kind of judge the amount of space between each step. Also keep steps sturdy and textured to prevent falls in wet or icy weather. If there's a pool at your home, restrict access to the pool or a hot tub by surrounding it with a fence, installing a gate with a lock, and ensuring that the pool or hot tub is covered when it's not in use. And again, avoid outdoor clutter. I leave stuff around my yard all the time, the hose, gardening things, everything. So assess what your kind of outdoor space looks like. And again, consider what might be a hazard for tripping and try to clean up that area. And again, safely store any fuel sources. So this could be for your grill or some other outdoor equipment that might be outside in a shed or something like that. We want to make sure that that's still locked up safely as well. And just some other safety precautions to consider. So these were kind of some of the loose ends that didn't quite fit into one specific room, or could be applied for all of them. So in general, prepare for emergencies. So display emergency numbers or your home address near all telephones, so that someone can easily have access to them if needed. Also consider a personal safety monitoring device. So you may have seen them, the devices you can wear around your neck, and some of them have an automatic fall detection function. So if the person with dementia or the caregiver were to have a fall, help would automatically be requested. So that can be a really great product that brings a lot of peace of mind. An example of that product is the Philips Lifeline devices. Also consider adjusting your home phone or voicemail settings. So lowering the ring on the home phone can help prevent confusion for the person living with dementia, or setting up your voicemail setting so that the voicemail kicks in after the least amount of rings. So this can be helpful if the person with dementia has a difficult time taking a message. The voicemail may be likely to pick it up before the person with dementia, and it may also reduce that risk of them being involved with any kind of telephone scam if the voicemail is picking up first. Again, keep stairs safe. So install light switches at the top and bottom of stairs. Make sure stairs have at least one sturdy handrail that extends beyond the first and last steps. Cover stairs in carpet or apply non-skid strips. And if the person has balance problems, consider installing safety gates in front of the stairs or at the top of the stairs. We also want to make sure that our homes have working smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors. So make sure that these are located in the kitchen and near the sleeping areas, and check to make sure that they are working often. If the person with dementia has vision or hearing problems, install a smoke alarm with a vibrating pad or a flashing light. So this can be a great alternative for that. Monitor computer and internet use. So if you have valuable documents on your computer, protect your files with a password or create backup files, and also consider monitoring the person with dementia's computer use, and stay up to date and informed about computer scams that are out there, because they're kind of an evolving field. So we always want to make sure that we're up to date on that area. Shoes and slippers with good traction can help the person move around the home safely. Also be careful about small pets. So the person with dementia may trip over a small pet and fall as they're kind of moving around quickly, so just being aware of that. Consider using signs or pictures to identify important objects, rooms, or potential dangers. So using brightly colored signs with simple written instructions or pictures to remind them of danger, to label an important room or item, or to show them where to go. So these can be great kind of memory aids to use. And limit the size and number of mirrors in your home, and think about where you put them. So mirror images may confuse the person with dementia or cause disorientation. So I know mirrors are sometimes used as like a decorative item, but maybe a lot of mirrors, maybe having one mirror for kind of that function of being able to see yourself would be best. And the last thing I just want to mention about all of those safety considerations is that, again, these are all considerations to make based on the needs and abilities of the person with dementia that you are supporting. So I know we went through a lot of them, and there was a lot of kind of detailed considerations, but striking that balance between safety and independence can be a big challenge, and is something that is always changing as dementia progresses. So make the changes that are suitable to where the person with dementia is at now, but also continue to adjust as you see or anticipate changes happening. And the last area that we want to consider here in terms of safety in the home is considering physical health. So physical health is a big part of us being able to live at home safely. Our physical health keeps us at home longer, so it's definitely an important factor to consider. So as dementia progresses, the person with dementia may require assistance with physical health considerations. So it may be helpful to review the person with dementia's ability to attend regular appointments with the physician. So it may be helpful to have a partner or family member accompany the person with dementia to any medical appointments, and even take notes of the appointment. It's also important to review the person with dementia's ability to take medications as prescribed. So people living with dementia may take multiple prescribed medications for dementia or other health conditions. So we want to make sure that the medications are administered properly and safely. So some things to consider would be staying organized by using a pill dispenser. This will help you to track when to take the medication, or also talking to your pharmacist about having medications put into blister packs can help with that organization of medication. Also consider keeping an updated list of medications with instructions on how and when to take them, so that if family, friends, or a professional are going to be helping, it's all laid out there for them. Also keeping an eye on medicine expiry dates. So a pharmacist is always a good resource in terms of anything related to medications, whether it be expiry dates or just kind of wondering about the interaction between medications. They're a great resource. Also, check with your doctor regularly to review prescribed medications and to ensure that they are being taken correctly. Another important element of physical health is staying active. So ensuring or assisting the person with dementia with regular exercise or activity can help to reduce the risk of heart disease, stroke, or diabetes. It can also help them to maintain independence and to provide greater ease with day-to-day functions if they have that muscle strength that can help them do that. Muscle strength is also associated with reducing the risk of falls, which allows for a safer lifestyle at home. Also, checking prescription glasses and hearing aids to ensure good operation is an important part of both physical health and safety at home. We want to make sure that these items are in good working order, and it also improves the quality of life for the person with dementia as well if they can hear and see properly. And lastly, we want to ensure that the person with dementia is maintaining a healthy diet and staying hydrated. So research has found that a diet that is both nutritious and balanced can help boost brain functioning, slow memory decline, and increase energy levels for the person living with dementia. Good hydration is also important to help the brain work at its best, and severe dehydration can cause cognitive difficulties to occur. So that's an important factor of physical health as well. So now I'm going to turn it back to Sarah. For our last little bit there, she's going to just address a couple of points about driving, as it's a common safety question.
Great. Thank you, Shelby. So yes, even though this presentation has primarily focused on safety in the home, we also receive a lot of questions about safety in the community, especially when it comes to things like safe driving and safe travel. These can both pose possible risk to the safety of the person living with dementia and to others as well, just depending on the situation. So let's explore in our last few minutes together about how we can keep people living with dementia and other members of the community safe. So people living with dementia may still be able to drive for some time after a diagnosis of dementia. However, it is important to keep in mind that there may come a time when it is no longer safe to do so. When it comes to driving, we need to consider the following points. So having a discussion early on in the diagnosis that access to the car may be removed at some point. You know, knowing sooner rather than later that it will happen may make it easier when the time comes. So having that open and honest discussion. Keeping an eye out for any driving difficulties or concerns that may arise. So looking for things like slow response times, traffic violations, collisions, taking too long to reach a destination, or perhaps not even reaching the destination at all. Those could be signs of driving concerns. It may be helpful to involve a professional and you know, asking a doctor to help determine when it's no longer safe to drive. It may make it easier for family members as well as for the person living with dementia. And of course, it's important to be aware that the doctor may be bound by law to immediately report any medical conditions that would impair a person's driving skills. So that's key as well. Reassessing driving skills on a regular basis. So it could be that you arrange to have special testing done to assess the driving skills of the person. This could be something like a driving simulation test or a road test that's carried out by somebody that has the experience in testing cognitive impairment on the road. And it's important to talk with your physician for a referral for an assessment such as this. Also, don't forget to consult with the Alzheimer's Society staff. And the staff are equipped to deal with difficult decisions and can certainly help point families in the right direction to assist with having discussions like these. The Alzheimer's Society also has a great resource called Conversations About Dementia and Driving, if that could be helpful. So it's available both online and in hard copy form. So you can find it on our website, but if you contact the Alzheimer's Society, we're happy to also mail that out to you. It is key to know that driving must be stopped immediately if the safety of the person living with dementia or others on the road is at risk. So that is a key point to keep in mind. Now, while traveling, whether near or far, is something that many people enjoy, changes associated with dementia may make it difficult to travel. So when we think about traveling to ensure safety while we're doing so, there's certain precautions that can be taken into account. So, asking to have a friend or a partner or spouse, another family member to come along in case help is needed along the way. Planning ahead when using public transportation. So, writing down how to get there and how to get back from that destination helps to ensure the person's familiarity with the route that they're taking. And, always consider talking to a bus driver or a transit employee about any potential safety concerns that might come up for you. If there's going to be a disruption in the route or some other issue that maybe you would like to get more information on. So consider talking to others as well. If you can consider traveling during the day whenever possible, that's always best. And traveling at night can be a bit disorienting as well. So if you are traveling at night, consider letting someone know the departure time, the destination that you have in mind, and then of course the expected date or time of return as well to aid in that safety. And it may be helpful to explore some community-based transportation programs in the area instead if there are some safety concerns about driving. And again, please don't hesitate to contact the Alzheimer's Society that may be able to assist you in finding some of these transportation programs that are in place in your area. So we discussed a lot about safety today, both in the home and in the community. We just wanted to turn it over to you. I can stop sharing my screen here and just ask if there are any questions that anybody has that have come up from our discussion today. Any questions or comments, feel free to just unmute yourself.
Okay, we're constantly looking for things like keys or his phone or whatever. Is there any advice you have on how to, I don't know, I don't want to say train, but maybe train is the right word, to put things in a particular spot so that we don't spend so much time searching for things, because he either forgets where he puts it or it's just randomly put somewhere. So
that's a great question, Nancy. That's one of the biggest reasons for misplacing things. It's because we don't put it back in its home, its rightful place. So
right.
That's a hard thing. If you can kind of build that routine that you have like a little spot when you enter your home, if it's a little hook for your keys, a little basket
Right.
for your keys. But there's certain places that you can continuously go through the routine. The person with dementia can often follow that routine and get into the habit of doing those kinds of things. So I know it can be a bit tricky at first, but even labeling, so if the person is still able to read, labeling keys here, whatever it may be that you're trying to help them to remember. You don't be afraid to use signage or post-it notes that can help direct where those items should go. Keeping duplicates is helpful.
Yeah.
Keys,
Yeah.
I mean, keys go missing all the time. And,
Yeah.
it's always before we're on the way out the door to a doctor's appointment or something really important. And you know what? I always say, keep duplicate keys, because you're going to find the other ones. They're going to pop up somewhere.
Yeah.
But kind of take the stress off yourself, knowing that we'll get to that later, but that I do have a separate set that I can, go to. So I don't know, Shelby, anything else that you can offer that way? Tips?
I think just keeping in mind that those like contrasting colors can be really helpful for like grabbing someone's attention. So if you are kind of trying to create a spot for someone to put an item, if it's like if the sign or something is like a bright yellow, or something that is a good contrast and will kind of catch their attention, then that might help kind of make the first step. Otherwise, you might be in the door and up the stairs before he kind of sees that spot. So that might help at least kind of draw the attention to that action that you're hoping for. Okay,
thanks.
And even if the person doesn't recognize words, even finding a picture card or a picture that could display keys here or whatever it may be, Nancy, could be helpful as well.
About,
just to kind of
safety and
jog their memory as to where it goes.
Do you want some breakfast?
Yeah.
Cereal?
Any other questions from our conversation today? I know we covered a lot of information. When Shelby and I were designing this session, we realized how all-encompassing safety can be. We started by looking at the home, and then a lot of aspects from the community came into play as well. So safety is always a key concern. Something that we, it's evolving and changing all the time. And I think it's something that we hear from a lot of our clients that they're always wanting to know more tips and strategies about. So
Roy has seen the geriatric specialist at the Gaines Center there in Port Hope, and he's been told that on a day-to-day basis he's functional. But there are times when I do leave him for a couple of days to get to see my mother, who is like 90, right? So it's sort of betwixt and between, right, for me. What I've been doing though is I make a chart out for him of I'm only gone for maybe 1.5 days, up to 2 days, but I make a chart. Do this, do this, do this, do this, and make sure that he has food that he can just zap in the microwave, so he doesn't have to touch the stove, which is my biggest fear, right? So that's what we've been doing, and it seems to be working pretty good. And he checks off everything as he's done it. So
that is a great strategy. And that's, what Shelby mentioned several times. I also alluded to a couple of times that, you have to find what works best, right, for the person. And if a checklist like that, or, listing the things on a calendar and they can scratch it off or cross it off, that's very rewarding for their independence and their confidence level as well. That's working. So knowing that he kind of reports to the chart and knows what's expected of him each day, that's a great strategy that's working for you right now. And you may notice as things change that you may need to adapt that strategy a little bit, but it's good that you found a really helpful solution for what
And he has cleaned out his workshop as well. All the big tools are being given to my son and son-in-law. So.
And how does he feel about that? Sometimes it's nice to be able to pass those things along, like knowing that they're going to go to another good home that will enjoy them. I know it is hard to part with some of those things.
It is. It's very sad. Yeah, it's sad for him to do it, but he realized that he just can't take the chance with them anymore. Like, I have to be there, right, when he's using the saws and all that stuff. So,
well, that shows a great level of insight too, that he
yeah,
has awareness that, you know, it's a safety concern. So
yeah, yeah.
and you know that it's okay, right? We often grieve the changes that accompany what's changing in the brain. So if he's
Mm-hmm.
grieving, you know, having to give up those things, that's okay. And it sounds like
Yeah,
you're being very supportive, you know, when those
yeah,
changes do occur.
yeah,
So keep
yeah.
up the good work. Keep up the good
Thanks. Thanks.
Any other questions or thoughts or comments about our session today? Certainly, if you're looking for any of the resources that we spoke about, please don't hesitate to contact Shelby or myself or your client support coordinator. We can put you in touch with any or all of those resources if they might be helpful to you.
Okay.
David, yeah.
I have difficulty drawing the line between being a helicopter mum and taking away her independence. For me, it's easier if I just do stuff. If I wait while she does it, I get frustrated, and it often gets done incorrectly. So is it worse to let her do something wrong and then correct it, or just avoid having it done in the first place? And I'm thinking of even really simple things like setting the table. You know, I say, well, we need a knife and a fork each. Or she might put 2 knives out, or put one setting out. Now that's a really easy one to fix, but that's the level of cognition at the moment. And I just sometimes feel as if I take over, but she's got nothing to do, and she's very bored and follows me around. I had a freebie this morning because she was asleep in bed, but now that she's up, I'm going to have to go.
Well, David, I'll quickly just say that, you know, anytime you can help foster that independence, if it's a task that she wants to feel helpful doing, like setting the table, but you notice the 2 knives, just slip and grab a fork and put it out with it. You know, still allow her to do those things that she feels helpful doing, but then, you know, pop in and check in with her too, if she's okay with you assisting with that. You know, just say, hey, do you mind if I add a fork to that? You know, I notice that that's missing. And you know, just if there's certain things that you can do that you know she can do in a safe manner, I would continue to allow those kinds of things. It's hard to strike that balance between, you know, like you said, you use the helicopter parent analogy, and that is something that many caregivers and family members want to do. We often want to jump in and do it for the person to keep them safe, and but it's okay to let them try too. Sometimes what happens is, if we are always jumping in and trying to do it for them, you know, they'll start kind of deferring to you, and then if they do that too much, then that also means that they're not using those skills, so they're losing those skills. You know, and so if we can continue to allow them and encourage them to do those things and step in where needed and offer help for the tricky parts of that task, I think that's a really good approach. I don't know, Shelby, what are you thinking?
I agree. I think if it can be helpful sometimes to reframe some of those tasks as being activities for her. So where the focus is maybe less on the result and just the fact that she's engaged in doing something safely. Again, it may require a bit of fixing up at the end, but that might be an activity that she enjoys, but because of the changes with the dementia, her brain's having a hard time piecing it together to completion. But at least it's something that's keeping her brain working and engaged. So like Sarah said, just supporting it in any way that you can. But I also understand that if it's a time crunch, like you have to be at an appointment or something, you know, you might have to jump in from time to time to be on time to go somewhere. So reframing it as an activity can sometimes take the onus off of focusing on the end result.
Well, we had an interesting end result on our salad with the dressing was plum sauce.
There you go.
Sounds yummy.
Oh,
Yeah.
You never know until you try something new, right? You can
There
come
you
up with
go.
some pretty great creations. We
Anyway.
certainly hear you though, David. I know it can be tricky.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's hard being the chief decision maker too when you've always worked as a team for so many years.
Yeah.
It's really hard to be in that role. For me, anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for many people that are living with dementia, as time goes on, they'll often look for you to step in, right? When they're a little bit skeptical about their abilities to continue to do that, or they're losing that confidence, they'll often look,
Confidence, yeah. Just
and so, but instead, keep it a team effort if you can, wherever possible, tackle it together. I always say step in to help out with the tricky parts. Check in with them if it's okay, but many times they're looking for you to step in and help with the tricky parts. But the parts that they can do, they feel very useful, very productive, very successful. And those are human needs that all of us have that don't go away, right? So whenever we can provide that opportunity, it's a great thing to do.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions or thoughts? These are great. No, this is such a good discussion, and I know we've gone over our time, but this is a very good and helpful discussion.
Yeah, it was great.
Okay, good. So our next Zoom session, our good friend and colleague Anne-Marie Peters will be coming back to talk about a program, Learning the Ropes, and so she'll be on tap to do our next session next Tuesday. So we hope you'll consider joining us then as well. Okay, thanks everybody for your participation today. We really appreciate it.
Well,
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we wish you all a great day. Enjoy the sunshine while it lasts. And maybe we'll get a little bit of rain there to kind of water our flowers and our grass. So look forward to that. Okay, take good care until we meet again.
Bye.
Bye.